Okay, looks like my YouTube is on live as well. Great. All right, so now that we're in business, sorry about that. Let's recap on what we worked on. So what we worked on is we had an issue where when we would republish the web part, it would crash and it would show that there was an error. Um, as well as when we would go into edit mode for the web part, it would also show an error. So let's go ahead and yep, so this is working now. So I can republish the page, I can edit the page, I can see all my edit buttons for all my all my questions in the web part. And then I can add a question here. So now the next thing that we need to do is delete. But before we do that, let me recap on what actually changed. So on the PnP.js config, I added a reset to the SP object. I also made it so that the SP object initially is undefined, which the reality is obviously that it's always going to be undefined until we define it. So it kind of worked to our advantage there. And so when we get the SP, now we check if context is not defined, and if the SP object is not defined, then we establish it. And only if the SP object is not undefined, then we go ahead and return the SP object. Another thing that we added is in the FAQ web part, we added a method for on display mode changed to re-render the main component. And then on disposed, we need to reset the SP object. I'm actually curious. I'm wondering if we remove, we might not even need this. Let's comment that out and see if it still works. Yeah, let's see if it still works. We republish the web part. It's working. Only reason I say that is because if you read here, it says on display mode method on modern pages, on display mode method, according to the docs, as long as you do your display mode handling in the render method, it should just work, which obviously our display mode is in our render method. So according to the docs, it should work. We shouldn't need that. So, and it looks like it is working. So we might just be able to do away with that. We may just be able to do away with that method if we don't need it. But let's just test and make sure that we really don't need it. So I was able to republish it, no issues. I was able to edit it, no issues. So yes, we can go ahead and get rid of this method. It's no longer needed. We commented it out. So it looks like the only thing that we really needed to do is just reset our SP object for it to work fine. Okay, so and the next thing that we did was on the FAQ web part, default layout, we added, after we iterate through all the FAQ items and we render them in cards that are expandable so we can see the question and answer, we then went and added an action button at the bottom that lets us add a new FAQ. So adding this new FAQ allows us to add a new item to the web part. So now that we recapped that, because that obviously was missing from the live stream when we started, now we can move on to the delete method. Inside of our hooks, we have add, edit, and now we're gonna create a delete one. So use delete items. Okay, and it's gonna be very similar to the way the edit items works. We're going to be utilizing this methodology to basically delete or remove the item from the array. So we're going to import from the assets folder. We're going to be importing we're going to be importing FAQ item, and we're going to import obviously delete FAQ item, which is our method. So if we go to our delete FAQ item, it's going to return a Boolean. If it went through and deleted the item, then it's going to return true. If it failed, then we don't receive anything back. So same thing as we created for the edit item, export const use delete items. And this is going to return an object, which is going to delete FAQ item mutation. And the mutation is going to receive the ID, basically the number of the item that is going to delete, the identifier. Okay. Why? Because if we look at the parameter that the delete FAQ item function from the API receives, is just the ID. So we're going to basically follow the same process here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add all of our original FAQ items. Why? Because we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing before. We're going to use optimistic update. And so optimistic update, if you recall, is it allows the user to instantaneously see the change. Now, if it fails, it just reverses it. If it succeeds, then it leaves it as is. Everything's wonderful. Everything's great. And that's the beauty that you get from utilizing tools like USSWR for your data fetching and for your data caching. If you have any questions about that, go back to my my video on the tool chain, and that'll explain more in depth why these things are used and how this really optimizes your web part. All right. So what this is going to do is it's going to return a promise of an array of FAQ items. The same thing is going to happen for the delete. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have deleted that. That parenthesis, because that parenthesis. Actually, no, I do need to delete that. Yes. So now we have our delete FAQ item options. Okay. And for our options, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pass the ID of the item we're going to remove and the array of FAQ items. Let's get rid of this. Sorry. Bring the parenthesis back. And here we're going to pass in the optimistic data, which is going to be the array of FAQ items. And roll back on error. Again, that was what I was mentioning, that whenever there is an error in the process of processing this request, if it fails, then it'll just put the original value back. If it doesn't fail, it leaves everything as is. So populate cache and then revalidate is our next property that we need to pass to our options. So with that, now we're ready to work on our actual functions that we're going to be returning. Obviously, as I said, we're going to be returning these mutations once they're created. All right, so const delete FAQ item mutation. That's going to be an asynchronous function, and it's going to receive the ID, which is the number. And it needs the ID and the number, and then it needs the original array of FAQ items so that it can clean it up. And this is going to return a promise of FAQ items. So let's work on that. Get rid of this. Let me just get rid of that, and we're gonna have a try catch in here. And if it errors out, then so if it errors out, it basically throws out a new error for us to catch in our we're going to be catching that inside of our error boundary. Okay. All right, so in our try, we're going to delete our item. We might not even have to we may not even have to, we might not even have to actually have I mean, because if we look at our function for, we just basically delete. We don't actually have to store it in a variable, the deleted item. We just have to await it. And if it goes through, then we basically have to create our updated array. So our updated FAQ items is going to go through the items, and it's going to remove the item where the ID is not. It's basically going to go through. Remember, I was talking about that revolving door. When you come to a building, you have a revolving door. So every time that revolving door checks, it's going to say, okay, are you this ID? Nope, proceed. If are you this ID? Nope, proceed. The moment that it hits that ID, it says, you're not allowed. So in this this command here, what we're doing in this syntax is basically saying we're going through the revolving door using the filter method, and the filter method is passing the item. Like I said, we're going, the item, each item is going through the revolving door, and as long as the item ID is not equal to the ID of the item we're deleting, then it's going to say go ahead and store it in the updated item FAQs. Okay, if it doesn't exist, then it's already been deleted. Nothing would happen. But again, we're saying that obviously the item does exist. The user comes in, clicks on delete. It's going to iterate through the items, find where the ID is alike, and not allow that one to be included in the array. Why? Because we're removing it. We don't need that anymore. And if it does error out, we're gonna just basically say error deleting the FAQ item, and we're gonna pass the error there. All right. So now the next function is delete FAQ item options. And again, we're passing the ID, which is the number of the item that we're going to be removing. All right. And in our options, we can look at and see where we are going to pass our options into our edit FAQ item options method. Again, these are stencils. Think of them as stencils. This is just going to allow you to have TypeScript assist you. Anywhere that you're utilizing this, it's going to assist you in letting you know the intelligence on what you're going to be typing into the function. So let's get our object going here for our properties, or our options rather, that we're going to pass into SWR. So roll back on error, populate cache, and revalidate. Okay, and now we actually build our actual function. All right, so we're going to build our optimistic FAQs, which is going to be FAQ item. Yeah, optimistic FAQ, which is going to be an FAQ item, and we're going to remove the item that we're removing. So instead of find here, we're going to use a filter function. But let me just double check my notes. So the mutation, and then on our options, yeah, exactly. We're just gonna use so here we're basically gonna say for our optimistic data. Sorry, let's so we added our properties that we need for, yes. So we're just gonna do a return statement here, and our optimistic data is going to be the original FAQ items, where we filter the item that we're deleting out of the array. Our rollback on error is going to be set to true because we want to roll it back if an error occurs, and our populated cache is going to be true. Essentially, our populated cache is just our state our array of items, and then our revalidate is going to be false. We don't need to revalidate. Why? Because we don't want to have to go to the SharePoint side and retrieve that information over and over and over again. That would defeat the purpose really of SWR in our case. In our SWR is set to be able to optimistically update and keep track of our data. And that's the benefit that we get, is that we won't have to go back into SharePoint every single time to retrieve the data over and over again. We're eliminating that factor, okay? So now that we have our delete items stencil, our cookie cutter ready, now we can leverage these functions anywhere in our web part. And the reason I'm teaching you to do it this way is because not all web parts are going to be this simple. Now we could certainly just write the hook into the component, but I'm teaching you this methodology because this allows you to then leverage this, just like you can leverage the components, the functional components. You can leverage them and move them around like pieces of Legos in a puzzle. You can do the exact same thing with these hooks and these helper functions. As a matter of fact, you can even take these helper functions, and if you have the correct objects, you can even build in generics. What I mean by generics is like when you go to the pharmacy, you can buy a generic Tylenol. You can buy generic ibuprofen. It's still the same similar ingredients, but you're using a generic drug. Same thing with TypeScript. Even though you can have FAQ item as a type, you can actually create a generic that allows you to input FAQ item. Or perhaps you have another scenario where it's a different part of the web part and it requires a different type. Because you utilize generics, it does the web part doesn't care. You can reuse these same functions over and over. And perhaps if we get further down the path of building something even more complex, if you have any ideas, put it in the comments. We can probably build a really complex web part, and you can see these things in action. Right now, because it's just very simplistic, and I'm just trying to get through the process of create, update, delete, and show you just how to actually work on these web parts and have the correct architecture behind it. Right now, our main focus is just let's get through these parts, and then once we have the basics now, then we can build some really complex stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun, but we work on these fundamentals first so that we can have our head in the game when it comes to architecture. These days, there's AI, there's a lot of things that can help us, but if you don't have down the architecture, I'm sorry, but it's just not going to help. You've seen me actually even try to use AI in these scenarios. Wasn't the greatest. It does a lot of spaghetti code. It doesn't always work. That's why it's important that you get an understanding of how the architecture works, and then you're practically be unstoppable when it comes to building these things. But anyway, let me get off that soapbox and let's continue on building the web part. So now that we have our delete items, we can actually have a button that deletes the item. And I'm thinking we could probably put it next to the edit button on the web part itself. So if we go to a default layout, we had our card. And then our card, let's go see what we got under our card. So our card is receiving the item. So I think we can use deleted items in our card so that we can get rid of our item. Let's see how we handled. So it looks like we handled toggle here, and on this button, how did we do? Okay, so the chevron, no, so the toggle is for the chevron, so I can close and open. The action button, this is where we handled toggle hide dialog. So when you clicked on that button, it disappeared. Our objective now is to have another action button here that deletes the web part, not the web part, but the question itself. So my GitHub Copilot is thinking that we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We are not. We are going to be deleting the item from here. So the question becomes, do we have the item itself? we have the one item itself. We don't have the array of items. So let's go back to our, inside of our default layout, we have our cards. And so in here, we can have, so in our FAQ form, let me go look and see what we have here. In our FAQ form is where we have our use and our add items. But now we're going to be deleting the items. So the deleting of the items can happen, it can happen in here. So let's bring in our methods to delete our items. Equals use delete items. Okay. And in our delete items, we have our delete item mutation, and we have our delete FAQ item options. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that we have to have our the ID of the item we're deleting, and then we also have to have the array of items that we're going to be removing. So I think we're probably going to have to use this at the top level and just pass it into the card. So let's go back and go to our top of the web part here, where we have our, not our form. In our default layout, we have our form, and then we have our cards. So let's use it here. So we're going to use our delete items here. Sorry, let me go in here. Okay, so we have our delete item mutation, and we have our deleted options. Why? Because we're going to pass our FAQ item array to both of these setups. So we're going to have a function that deletes, handles the delete of the FAQ item. So this is going to be a function that receives the ID, and then it deletes that ID. All right, so we're going to utilize we're gonna mutate FAQ items, and we're gonna have our delete FAQ mutation, which is going to receive the ID of the item. The question becomes, where do we get our ID? Okay, so our ID, we can pass it into our handle delete FAQ, and then we're gonna pass our FAQ items. The same thing for our options. I'm not entirely sure that we have to pass an empty array. Why? Because if we look at our, if you ever get data from SharePoint, if it's an array, it's going to if it's an empty, if there's no items in the list, it's still going to return an empty array. So there's really no need to enter an array in this scenario, because it's already going to return an empty array to you. So you don't need to do that. All right. So our handle delete FAQ item is going to need the ID, and so this, we're going to be able to pass it into our card. So yes, so we're gonna pass it into our card. So let's take this. You can just copy this. When you hover over it, it's gonna tell you the type for the function, and we can just say in our card, we're gonna add this in here, handle delete FAQ item, and in our delete button that we had down here, oh, the reason it's giving us this issue is because we need to have a React fragment. So let's add a React fragment there, move this up, error is gone. And this is probably going to say that we need to await. So we're going to make this into an async function. And then we're going to await the deletion of the item. And handle delete FAQ item is going to have to be passed to the card. All right. So now let's see if our web part is loading. Good. So you see, now we can actually delete our items from our array. So if I click on the delete, if I click on edit, it's gonna let me edit. I'm gonna test it. AM. There's our change. Okay. Now if I want to delete an item, delete, you can already see optimistically I am deleting these items. And we can actually check our contents to make sure that our items are getting deleted. Let's go check that right now. So our FAQ list has 5 items in it. How many are we seeing? 1, 2, 3. Let me refresh this. So we should only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So clearly there's an error. No? All right, let's go and delete one more. Let's see what happens. Let's refresh this. We should only, yep. And then if we republish, our buttons are gone. How about that? So you see how easy using this methodology is? I think that this is, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I love to do. It is a bunch of fun to actually be able to work on this. And so if you really think about just how your users are going to have a really positive experience with your development methodologies, this is the kind of stuff that you want to make sure that you're providing that user experience, and the user experience allows you to have a responsive, very finely tuned web part that a user is actually going to enjoy utilizing, right? There's nothing like, oh man, there's your web part just broke, there's nothing there, I can't figure out what's going on. Well, we incorporated the error boundary so that if an error occurs, the users will be able to tell you, hey, there's an issue here. It's not allowing me to delete, and here's the error, or it's not allowing me to edit, and here's the error. And I mean, it will be very, very good for your users to be able to do that. So if we click on edit, another thing that I think we can do is let's go look at our section. So like if we had 1/3, I like the way this looks for the 1/3 of the page. The only problem is, I can see the web part here. The only problem I would say is whenever you have this in a section that's a full width or one column, it doesn't look quite that good, I think. Let's see what we can do to make this work better for us. I'm only gonna stream for an hour today, and then I'm gonna try to think of some other features we can add to this. I'm thinking that we could definitely build more and more on this. So it looks like this stack item has a fixed width, I believe. Let's go take a look. So our card is in our default layout. Here we go, horizontal align. Let's get rid of this horizontal align and see what that does for us. I think it's probably going to shift it all the way to the left. Yep, sure enough, look at that. and it actually fixed our styles. So let's do that. Let's edit. Now if we do our section, we say a third, still looks great. I think that looks awesome. I guess the only concern I would have is if we add a question that's long. Like, let's go get some lorem ipsum text, shall we? Just so that we can see what that looks like. So let's go here. Let's say we add this question in here, and we add this answer. Let's see what this looks like. You want to test for also, I mean, not all of us are as lucky to have a testing team. It looks like we have an error. Do you see that? Like it shows up and then it just goes away. All right, submit. Server error. You know what it is? We have a 256 character limit. And I believe that the answer, let's go look. But I'm fairly certain that the answer, let's go to list settings. Yep, the answer is single line of text. We should have really thought about that and probably had the answer be multiple lines of text. Yeah, I wonder if it let me change it. Let's try it out. I mean, worst thing that can happen is it messes up. All right, so I don't know about enhanced rich text. I've had problems with this where it shows like div. By the way, if you ever get this setting, do yourself a favor and say no thank you. The reason being is because if you cache it, especially as a developer, when you make changes, if it's caching, guess what? Your changes are not gonna load. I've had that happen to me before. I'm like, I just made the change, the page refreshed, and everything's still the same. Well, the reason is because Chrome is using that caching method. So keep that in mind if you ever decide to use that. All right, let's try this again. Now it's multiple lines of text. I think it's adding it, but it's adding up. Wow, that's not good. It's adding it a bunch of times. Let's go look and see what our list looks like now. Yeah. So one thing that you could do is the actual form component. So let's look at the FAQ form. It actually has a prop, or yeah, in the form states, I believe it has is submitting. So if it is submitting, we should disable. It should be disabled if it is submitting. Okay, that way we can, let's just get rid of all these tests that we did before. And now let's refresh our area here. I think I still have some items in here. Let's check. Nope. Maybe it's just caching some. All right. Oh, we have a problem. See, now it says no FAQ items found. So good thing that we checked to make sure that we're able to see. We need to be able to see the button at the bottom for adding a new FAQ. Okay. So right here, and then we can actually put a message that says, um, edit the page to add FAQ. Let's do that. So, and this should only show up if display mode is not in edit. So we can actually do this here. If it's display mode, and if it's not, we're gonna do this. So if it's not in display mode, if it's not in edit, we're going to display this. Actually, let's do this. Let's copy this in here. That's fine. And then in here, we can get rid of, I think we can just get rid of this div. Let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. We can just add our div up here. We don't even, yeah. Let's try that. So if it's in edit mode, oh, I got it the opposite. So if display mode is not equal to edit, if it's not equal to edit mode, then we would basically be telling the user a message like there's no questions. Go ahead and add questions so that we can so we can see questions on your web part. Now that we're in edit mode, we can add a new FAQ. We can copy our question. And then we can add our answer. And see, now we don't have that problem where when I was pressing down that button, maybe I was holding it for too long and it was creating multiple questions. So you can see how React hook form really helps us out, because with React hook form, we're able to basically say, keep the web part from continuously submitting items if we are not needing to add that many, or we're in the middle of adding items. If we're in the middle of adding items, we don't want that form to continue to add items there. Okay. So far we have our web part with edit and delete and add. We have optimistic updating. So we can continue to add additional, let me move this out. Okay, so we have our question. We have our answer. Okay. Now let's look at what it looks like. And here's what I was talking about. You see how it's adding this div stuff? Personally, I prefer to use, I mean, it's not within the scope of what I'm working on right now for this, but personally, I think that you could, it's not within the scope of what I was planning to do for this web part. So what I would suggest for what we do to fix it is we can set it to plain text, but I mean, we're already working on this. So what do you say we just bite the bullet and then just continue to work on this and figure out what it is that we have to do to make it work. So let's do that. Let's figure out how we can make it work with a with this web part. If I'm thinking about this correctly, I think what we can do is inside of our card component, we can have let's look and see if there's anything rich text. multiple lines of text showing markup, React, SharePoint. Explain the raw HTML React with markup. Yeah, see, it's basically telling us to use this dangerously set inner HTML. God, I'm not a fan of that at all. So it looks like, I wonder if this is something I have to install. I'm assuming we do. Let me double check. Let's try it out. If it's not, then we can use this rich. Yeah, so this SPFx controls React. We have to install it. Yeah. We can look into it. I don't like to install an entire set of tools for just one thing. I guess the only other thing that I would probably use from this set of tools would be the placeholder. I've used this before. The placeholder is really cool because it allows you to say configure and click a button and be able to open that tool pane, or even set the page to edit mode, which is beneficial for our web part. So I mean, we can certainly look into it and see how we can fix that. For now, I'm just going to set it to be you know, a plain text field. That way we don't have this problem. So we go to column settings. Let's change this to a plain text field. Let me just double check that that did that. I've never really gone through that way of setting it up. So we have multiple lines of text. Plain text, perfect. Now we go back to our FAQ web part. We can add a question. Edit the page to add FAQs. And we can copy this text. Now if we expand it, that looks a lot better. Why do we use it? Add another FAQ. Add this answer. Submit. And now let's see what it looks like when we change the section. And obviously the user is going to be you know, making they're using their judgment to see how they're going to use this web part. I think that what we can add after this is we can add something like expiration, right? Like we can add something like an expiration date to when the web part should display a question. Sorry, it's been a long day. Yeah, so we can actually have it set up to where you have a certain date that you want the web part to no longer show that question. And that's something that we could probably work on adding to this tool, right? Because we probably want to be able to tell the user, hey, I added some additional features to this where you don't have to go in and remove questions on, you know, remember to. You can just say, you can tell the web part, hey, after this date, I no longer want it to show up this question anymore. So, but you know, that's something that we can add on our next meetup. So far, I think we were very productive today. We were able to fix the issue with the edit and republish, where our web part loads fine when we do that. We were able to do a little bit of styling fixes. I think that there could be additional ones. Another thing that we could consider is adding like different sections. So like If you want the FAQ web part to not only just handle one set of FAQs, you want it to maybe have a tabular view on the top that allows you to iterate through several different FAQ web parts. So not FAQ web part ideas, but FAQ design ideas. Let's look at that with the images. So we have this question and answer, which is kind of what we already have. Let's see what else we have. Similar to what we have already. Oh, that's a cool feature. We can add that at the top that allows us to filter down the questions. That's another feature that we can add to it. Oh, I like the styling on this. I like the fact that you can add a background to it. Probably add a feature to do that. And this is what I was talking about. You notice how it has a section and then it has questions, and then it has another section and it has questions and answers. I think that's pretty cool. I think that you could, but now that I think about it, you could technically take the web part and just use it multiple times. But the question becomes, how does the user know to select a certain set of questions for, maybe we can ask them to put in a category. Like in this scenario, we would have a category for bolt or whatever that says in the first one. The bolt difference, the bolt network. So those are sections, or those are options for categories. Here's another one. I would always recommend that you look up different things for inspiration to give you some idea. Oh, look, this is perfect. This is exactly what I had in mind. You notice it has tabs on the top, and then those tabs allow you to add a question and answer scenario. I think that this would be really cool to do. And then obviously add the feature so you can have multiple of these throughout the page. I think we can create a full suite of FAQs so that we can allow the user to say, you know what, I can have FAQ web parts with different methods or different looks and feel to it. So I'm gonna keep this open. I think that this is something that we can use the next time we meet as an additional feature to our web part. I think this is some pretty cool things that we can probably add to our web part in our next time we meet. But anyway, I hope that you found this beneficial. Again, if you have any ideas or you want to put in the comments any use cases you can think of, if you have an issue or something that you're working on that you would like to share, that you're like, hey man, it'd be cool to take a look at this and see what ideas you have around it on how we can handle that. Please put it in the comments. And please, it's my birthday. It was my birthday this weekend. Subscribe to my channel. As I mentioned at the beginning of my stream, about half of you are not subscribed, and it really helps my channel grow. I'm really trying to grow my channel. I'm really trying to share as much of my knowledge as I can. Ideally, I would love to have you be a part of that, and I would love to share more and more ideas on how to build these web parts. Please give it a shot. Subscribe to my channel, put that alarm on there. I am on YouTube if you want to rewind this while we're going live, and also put it in something in the chat. If you have a question about something, put it in the chat. I'll be happy to help. Okay. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I'll catch you all tomorrow where we'll look and see what we can add as far as the other features that we were just discussing to this web part. Thank you so much. Take care.